Welcome to 411 on 420. I'm Daryl Bowman, your business professional in cannabis. Hey, thanks for joining us today and every Tuesday and Saturday when we talk about the business of cannabis. We are here today discussing how you can better understand cannabis-related businesses and make informed decisions in a, growing industry. We are going to be talking about ways that you can understand the business interactions between different cannabis operations, the ways that you can become more informed about the terminology used in an industry that you might not be familiar with. But we are always going to be talking about employment, economic benefits, and how your community is affected with cannabis coming into it. We are now this is Washington State, we're one of the few states, 5 of us, that are legal and recreational using cannabis. There are 23 plus states that are medicinal in nature. And when we think about the tribal issues, there are all 50 states throughout the tribe have the opportunity, about all 50 states throughout the nation have the opportunity to use, sell, and grow recreational medicinal cannabis through the tribal entities wherever they may be, because if they choose to, the government has said that it's okay. But that is a lot to take in a very short period of time, and we do want to make sure that when we talk about, the opportunities for economic development, for job creation and so forth, that you out there in the consumer world or in the business world, if you're thinking about employing somebody or you're thinking about using a service, please think about your nation's veterans. Our nation's veterans are the people that wrote a blank check for their lives to say, we're going to do whatever we can to protect your freedoms and give you the liberties and the opportunities that you in the United States of America get that no one else across the planet has. So, take the opportunity. If you're going to hire somebody, seek out a veteran, because those folks deserve the opportunity. We're not looking for a handout, just a hand up. So give them the opportunity to earn a job with your organization. They're very trustworthy. They have integrity. They're pretty fair. They can work independently, and they are accountable. So all those pluses are there for you when you're thinking about hiring somebody to represent your business in the most ethical and honest way possible. Additionally, if you are thinking about using a product or a service, let's say you want to get your car repaired, your house rebuilt, an addition, a fence, or whatever, there is a huge Rolodex of individuals at the Department of Veterans Affairs in the state of Washington that contains a list of all veteran-owned businesses. Those businesses are there for you to choose from and give them the opportunity to earn your business. They have taken, yet another sacrifice and decided to, start a business. And we all know that is not the easiest thing to do. You not only sacrificed yourself to provide freedoms for those individuals in the country, but you've also sacrificed yourself and sometimes your sanity to be able to provide for your families and provide for those around you. So again, think about those individuals. And, we're always talking about things that politics, we talk about laws, we talk about, what we're going to do to make those decisions. And, we've had a complex set of problems, if you will, around the cannabis industry, and a lot of varying information. We've always had people that are, we voted for it, and then they vote against it, and then they put bans on it, and so forth. But we really don't know from one day to the next what's going on. So today we're going to be talking about lifting the ban that we have in rural Pierce County, for unincorporated Pierce County, if you will. It's a ban on all cannabis operations, and lifting it, putting it on, lifting it again, advising people to vote against it, and so forth. It's really complicated in what's going on there. So we're going to come back after these short messages. We're going to talk with Nick Van Putten of Progressive Strategies Northwest about that ban and what's going on there. I'm Daryl Bowman, your business IT professional in cannabis, and we'll be right back after these short messages.
Thanks to our friends at Zukin.com, your local strain directory for the cannabis connoisseur. That's Zooken.com, Zukin.com. Find your strain.
AimBiz.com brings you the life of a business website. The majority of business websites can't be found by search engines, so their owners lose customers and money. An AIM business website wins new customers on Google and Facebook. Imagine your website with great content management, an integrated blog, clean designs, and clear messages. To top it off, at aimbiz.com, you get a free website design mock-up before you ever spend a dime. For more information, go to aimbiz.com. That's AIMBIZ.com.
Sweatman Young is proud to celebrate 25 years of construction service throughout South Puget Sound, working together with you to guarantee your satisfaction and offer you a unique 2-year warranty on all work. Let Sweatman Young build your new dream home, remodel your existing home, add an additional deck, outdoor kitchen, a man cave, or even preserve your historic home. Sweatman Young provides the best construction value in South Puget Sound. Visit sweatmanyoung.com today and schedule your free consultation with Bill Sweatman, your personal professional contractor.
Ever get a traffic ticket? Had a bill you couldn't collect? Had a contract you needed advice about, such as a new insurance plan, home, or car loan? We run into these situations routinely throughout our lives. We know we need legal advice, but feel we just can't afford hiring an expensive attorney to help. Legal Shield and your legal team is now your affordable option, allowing each of us to rest assured we can quickly get the help we need for one low monthly fee. Whether it's business or personal legal advice, visit yourlegalteam.info today.
Welcome back to the 411 on 420. I'm Daryl Bowman, your business and IT professional in cannabis. Thank you so much for joining us today and every Tuesday and Saturday when we talk about the business of cannabis. Today we are here with Nick Van Putten, and he is a he's with Progressive Strategies Northwest. They are a political consulting group. Welcome, Nick. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me on.
Hey, we'll get right up onto that microphone and let's have a discussion. So tell me, really quick, Nick, how did you get in your little circuitous route become a political consultant? Because, I mean, really, who wants to be a political consultant?
Who knows the field even exists, right?
Exactly. Well, they're out there somewhere. I know they are.
Yeah. We got a little more attention recently. Frankly, though, it used to be the people in my field who did this work on campaigns were the guys who designed cereal boxes. So,
really?
Yeah, we're a pretty new field.
Oh, yeah?
Only the last couple decades. Anyways.
That's advertisement, I take it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It was your all-purpose advertising firms used to do campaigns back in 70s, 80s, even a little bit in the 90s. So.
Okay. So we've come a little bit farther because there's a lot of targeted marketing and there's a lot of targeted opportunities specifically to demographics and so forth. So How did you go about getting in this area?
So I guess I got my start working on campaigns in 2006, working on an environmental measure, the PERGs, Wash PERG, doing
what?
Yeah, no one knows about that, right?
Seriously,
unless they came to your door.
What is that, really? Real quick.
Fund for Public Interest Research. It's a nonprofit advocacy group. Works on consumer protection and environmental advocacy issues. So I was the guy going door to door, knocking on your door, asking for a donation for the environment.
Oh my gosh! Okay, you got to start somewhere, and you know what? That's the basics of all campaigns is door to door stuff. They say.
Yep, it was. It's the grassroots, right?
Right.
So did that for a couple summers while I was in college. Ended up working on the Obama campaign in 2008. I was a field organizer. Worked in Washington State, Alaska, and Indiana. Interesting experience on that.
No doubt about that. I mean, you went from Washington State and Alaska and then Indiana.
Well,
that's a very diverse distance.
Alaska was my request.
I love it too. It's a great place.
For me, looking in the Obama campaign in 2008, was pretty confident we would do well in that election. But for me, it was about building more of a movement and a conversation. So I wanted to go to rural areas and work with more conservative voters, trying to move the needle for us in that direction.
So you like walking a long distance?
I run between doors.
You're gonna say, yeah, no doubt about that, man. No doubt about that. That's a long distance. Living in Alaska, people are not that next door neighbors are not that close.
Right. So very different from inner city Indianapolis, where I got transferred partway through the campaign. But hey, that was all right as well. Got a good experience.
So you were working for somebody then, I take it, about that time?
On the Obama campaign.
Okay,
yeah.
on the Obama.
So
so they actually the campaign itself was hiring people and moving from state to state.
Yeah, technically our salaries were paid for by the local parties, but we were taking orders from.
Okay, well, I mean, we don't know how this all works, so that's what we're going to learn about today, just to get a little bit better understanding of how the political process works, and also so we can better understand how all these initiatives and measures go forth and how they're managed in the cannabis field as well. I mean, they're just no different than anybody else, right?
Yep. I mean, it's anything you can put on the ballot, whether it's a candidate, an initiative, follows similar sort of structure on campaigns.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about Progressive Strategies Northwest and what is it and how did you guys come about?
Sure. So we started the firm in 2011. At the time, it was two of us, Case Smith and myself.
Okay.
We'd both been doing local political consulting for another firm out here, and then started our own business in 2011.
Okay.
So.
And so now how many people do you have?
We're a 3-person firm. We brought on Ben Anderstone, who's up in Seattle, writes for Crosscut. Some of your listeners might have heard his name before.
Okay, yeah, I think I worked on with Ben from another campaign here locally as well.
Yeah.
When I volunteered, haven't volunteered very often, but the candidate I did like him. So Ben was the campaign manager at that point in time. So it was a few years back.
Yeah.
Good guy, So and how big is the team now?
Just 3 of us.
Just the 3 of you? Okay, fantastic. And so how many races are we talking about?
Over our career?
Oh yeah.
Probably about maybe 50 or so races over the last 5 years. Yeah,
that's a lot to keep involved with for a very short period of time.
Well, typically we'll do anywhere about half a dozen to a dozen candidates or campaigns per year.
Okay, and so how do you pick a candidate? I mean, how do you pick a? Do you have a mission statement involved with this or whatever?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of in our business name, right?
Okay.
Progressive Strategies Northwest. So we work for progressive candidates.
Okay.
Ultimately, here in Washington State, most of our elections are nonpartisan, right? Your city council members, in many counties, even your county council members or other office holders. Even our legislative races, we have that little note that it prefers Democratic Party or prefers Republican Party, right?
Right.
So that being the case, we work mostly for Democrats or other liberal or progressive local elected officials or ballot measures.
So are there any specific ones we might know here locally, or are you free to talk about those?
Sure. I think you had Derek Young on the radio
yes, we did.
Recently, right? He was one of our candidates.
He talked about the very subject we're going to talk about here as well.
I expect he did. Yeah, he's given a little bit of a headache up there on council. Yeah, that was a hell of an election. We ran against Stan Fleming, an incumbent Republican, managed to unseat him.
Okay. Well,
so that was good.
That was a heck of an election. Yeah, I remember Stan and I worked together many years ago at City of UP.
Yep. We've worked for a few folks otherwise in the area, members of Tacoma City Council, Anders Ibsen, Marty Campbell, David Bowe, other folks for school board or county level positions.
Oh, excellent. I think Robert Toms was one of your clients. No, it's Ben. That was Ben's guy.
Yeah, that was actually, that was interesting. In 2011, we worked on a campaign, Case and I, right before we brought Ben on, worked on a campaign with Anders Ibsen, and Ben was our opponent. Working with our opponent. We beat him on that one.
Okay.
He came back around a couple years later, worked with Robert Toms against our candidate, Patricia Lacey Davis, and he walloped us that time. So figured we'd run a few campaigns against each other, like each other's methods. We brought him onto the business, and we're working on the same side now.
Oh, well, there you go. I mean, hey, and so the winners got to stick together, right?
Well, you can't beat them, join them, right?
Oh, that's cool. So now you've been a part of 50 plus of those, and that's a pretty big number. How do you find these folks? Do they come to you, or you guys go out searching for them, or how's that work?
It's honestly the last couple of years it's been a lot more word of mouth reference. Past candidates or other folks we know referring us and getting those phone calls. I'll tell you, our first couple of years in the business, that was a lot of cold calls. Hey, John, we hear you might be interested in running for city council in your district, right? Right.
Yeah. Or if you're not thinking about it, we really think you ought to be thinking about it.
Yep.
Right?
So those were interesting calls, but now it's a lot more kind of word of mouth reference. We've got a website and Facebook page. Most of our clients just come from reference.
Well, now when you're talking about initiatives, because 502 was an initiative and so forth by the people, and then recently, one of the reasons we're here today is to talk about Pierce County. There was a little setup, and Initiative 502 came and it passed the recreational cannabis, and in the state of Washington. But yet the unincorporated part of Pierce County decided to, with the advice of a few Republicans on the Pierce County Council, decided to ban the operations of growing, producing, or retailing cannabis in unincorporated Pierce County, which we did have Derek Young on, and we talked about how ridiculous that was, given the fact that the vast majority of individuals in every precinct had said they wanted it and they didn't have a problem. So then through some period of time, however, and a lot of conversations, then they decided they would lift the ban. And in July 1, they were going to lift the ban. But, never mind. We don't want to just lift it. We'll lift it officially, but let's have an advisory vote about that lift that maybe we'll discuss, but doesn't really have any real benefit, but we'll do it anyway. So why don't we do that? And we're going to spend, upwards of $400K just to do that, and not really in a primary election, but just in an off election that happens in an April, so forth. Is that about right?
Pretty much, yeah. I'm sure Derek talked about this as well, but one of the
ridiculous.
One of the most absurd parts about it is that the amendment that went on to it to put it to an advisory vote didn't actually delay the implementation of the measure at all. So they're already going forward with it, regardless of the vote, right?
Right. Yeah. That's what I meant. We're going to implement it, but it doesn't really matter. We have an advisory vote.
So we've already passed it,
but we're going to vote anyway.
Yeah.
We're going to spend the $400K anyway to go out and get an advisory vote that really doesn't matter. And then, oh my gosh, we did that advisory vote. It just happened. And but you know what? We don't want everybody that voted on it to begin with to vote on it this time. What they did was they kind of gerrymandered the areas in such a way that only the unincorporated Pierce County individuals had the opportunity to vote on the ban.
Yes,
and the advisory, which is kind of interesting.
I mean, at the end of the day, this is a political gimmick, right? And it's pretty on face. So basically, what this is there are two parts of it. Either the Republicans on the council wanted to perhaps, if it had gone down in flames, right, and there was a real
70%
momentum
or something like that.
Well, I mean, maybe even 60 or something like that, right? That there would be a real momentum maybe to reverse course, right? Maybe they could put political pressure on some of the Democrats on council or the one Republican who voted against it, or for it, rather, and the executive. And then maybe they could then try to use the advisory vote to pressure them to reverse course on this.
To lift the ban, the rescission of the ban on July 1.
Right, exactly. That's frankly me giving them the benefit of the doubt. Because ultimately...
boy, you're really giving people the benefit. You're really out there stretching.
Right, I know, yeah. Well, but because quite frankly, what this is more about is it's about trying to embarrass people during an election year. Right.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you've got Pierce County executive running for statewide office. You've got members of the council running for re-election this year, and they'll be up again in 2 years.
Now, what's she running for? Pat's running for something?
State auditor.
Yeah, that's right. Yep. She's running for the auditor.
Yep.
And then we have several of the council members that are a couple of them. At least Rick Talbert is running for executive.
Rick Talbert's running for executive. He's currently on council, correct?
Right.
And then you've got Connie Ladenburg is going to be running for her re-election this year, I believe.
Okay.
You've also got Doug Richardson, who is the Republican who voted with the Democrats on this measure.
And what's he running for?
He's running for re-election.
Oh, re-election.
Yep, same term. And then I believe McCune is also up for re-election, although that's not necessarily as competitive of a district.
Oh, okay. So there's a few things going on. They all trying to, appeal to their base.
Appeal to their base, and really the Republicans trying to embarrass the Democrats by trying to get a measure that they can rig to be a negative vote and make the Democrats not listen to it. Right?
Oh, that's really nice. And who gets to pay for that?
Rather us, of course, the taxpayers.
So the taxpayers get to pay for a vote that really doesn't count, but really wants to count because it's a way to bolster their political cachet.
It's actually illegal to do a poll on something like this, a political poll with the public taxpayers, but an advisory vote is not illegal.
But it's a political poll.
Very poorly sampled one, yeah.
Oh yes, and so and then it went down in flames, and you guys were part of that. Then when I didn't go really,
I wouldn't quite say that. Yeah,
the ban advisory upheld to keep the ban. Wasn't it like 50% or something like that?
It was almost a 50-50 tie. Yeah, so we were under at 48%. Right,
okay.
So it was 48-52. Which means that the voters in unincorporated Pierce County in an April special election were slightly less favorable than the voters in November in 2012, when more people had a say.
We could have waited for that and then found out that it was resoundingly defeated. By the way, what is the fraction? What is the number? Comparative number of people that voted in this April election compared to what did vote or would vote in a regular general election?
Yeah, it's less than half. So turnout was about 30, just shy of 31% in unincorporated Pierce County in this April. Typically in November general elections,
that's less than a third. That's not even less than a half. That's less than a third
of the population. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So typically in November general elections in presidential years, you get upwards of 76 to 80% turnout.
Okay.
So a little bit less than half of that voted in April.
Oh wow, that's a significant number that to rely on a vote that really it didn't count again. So
Right. Yeah, it doesn't count either way.
It doesn't count either way. So, and the upshot is that is there going to be any change? Are we just going to go ahead and lift the ban, or do we have any notion of what's happening?
You have an opportunity to call your county council members, and that'll be in their court to decide. I'll tell you that my understanding of it is that the vote was close enough, and frankly, we won the measure in Doug Richardson's district, and he being the swing vote. It passed with about 54% of voters in Richardson's district upheld it, said they do want the policy lifting the ban.
Okay.
Right? So they do want retail marijuana.
A yes was to lift, right?
Yes. A yes vote was to uphold their ordinance and lift the ban.
Okay.
The ban. So my expectation is that the Republicans didn't get the political momentum they wanted. That this policy is going to stay the course. We're going to have legalized retail marijuana in Pierce County.
Now, PSNW was your firm, and you were involved. And so tell me a little bit about how you guys were involved.
Yeah, so I mentioned Derek Young was a client of ours previously. He obviously was instrumental in getting this passed in the first place, and reached out to let us know that there was a group of people who had been trying to open stores and been stonewalled by the county.
Okay.
So we got a hold of them, worked with them, the gallery, Ted and Mike.
Right, out there on
Pacific Ave. Yep, that's it. So those are the two folks who really headlined the Yes campaign, and so we worked with them, trying to get the measure to pass if we could, or at the very least to deny the Republicans what they wanted, which is a resounding defeat.
Okay, and so now when you say you do that, so give us a little bit of idea of what happens in the background from a firm such as yours, because you guys are the people I understand who put the science back in political science. You're the data
I'm glad to hear you using my talking points. That's fun. So what we do is the easiest way to think about it is we do all of the strategy, targeting, and messaging. Right. So easiest way you see is those TV ads you hate around election time. Those are my fault.
Okay.
Right.
Because you just said that you're back to advertising, and this is what this is all about.
So it's the advertising
Targeted
side.
Marketing.
Now, what we like to do, especially most firms in our business will do this, but it's an area of special interest for us, is working on the data and analysis side of that. So not just are you advertising, here are the people you need to talk to and the message you need to get out to them, but how do you micro-target those messages to exactly the right audiences, right?
Okay.
What does Daryl want to hear versus what Nick wants to hear, right? We might be on the same side of an issue, or might not. But so let's suppose we are. We might still have different points that would resonate with each of us, right?
Okay.
And so trying to determine what those are, and then message those people specifically with the right point in order to make sure that we're both yes voters.
So this is the same kind of thing that goes on in any advertising campaign anywhere. I mean, if you want to sell chewing gum or some kind of fruit drink.
Yeah, the difference is we're doing it with tens of thousands of dollars instead of millions of dollars. We don't have as many market research resources on campaigns as those guys have.
That is a true statement. Hey, let's do this. Let's take a break, come back after these short messages, and we'll talk more about how that's all financed and what's going on in the political arena. I'm Daryl Bowman, your business and IT professional in cannabis. We'll be right back with the 411 on 420.
Thanks to our friends at Zukin.com, your local strain directory for the cannabis connoisseur. That's ZOOKEN.com, Zukin.com. Find your strain.
And now, your Management Minute with Doug Kirkpatrick, author of Beyond Empowerment, The Age of the Self-Managed Organization.
Management is all about effective decision-making. The traditional domains of management include strategy, organizing, controlling, selecting, and coordinating. Good decision-making takes practice. In the new book, Decisive, by Chip Heath and Dan Heath, and reviewed by David Brooks in his recent article, The Choice Explosion, the authors point out just how difficult it is to make effective decisions. They note that 83% of corporate mergers and acquisitions do not increase shareholder value, and that 40% of senior hires don't last 18 months in their new positions. The authors share techniques for counteracting the mental flaws that lead to bad decisions. They embrace the notion of assuming positive intent. When we start with the belief that others are well-intentioned, it becomes easier to absorb information from people we'd rather not listen to.
AimBiz.com brings you the life of a business website. The majority of business websites can't be found by search engines, so their owners lose customers and money. An AIM business website wins new customers on Google and Facebook. Imagine your website with great content management, an integrated blog, clean designs, and clear messages. To top it off, at aimbiz.com, you get a free website design mock-up before you ever spend a dime. For more information, go to aimbiz.com. That's AIMBIZ.com.
Sweatman Young is proud to celebrate 25 years of construction service throughout South Puget Sound, working together with you to guarantee your satisfaction and offer you a unique 2-year warranty on all work. Let Sweatman Young build your new dream home, remodel your existing home, add an additional deck, outdoor kitchen, a man cave, or even preserve your historic home. Sweatman Young provides the best construction value in South Puget Sound. Visit sweatmanyoung.com today and schedule your free consultation with Bill Sweatman, your personal professional contractor.
Ever get a traffic ticket? Had a bill you couldn't collect? Had a contract you needed advice about, such as a new insurance plan, home, or car loan? We run into these situations routinely throughout our lives. We know we need legal advice, but feel we just can't afford hiring an expensive attorney to help. Legal Shield and your legal team is now your affordable option, allowing each of us to rest assured we can quickly get the help we need for one low monthly fee. Whether it's business or personal legal advice, visit yourlegalteam.info today.
Welcome back to the 411 on 420. I'm Daryl Bowman, your business and IT professional in cannabis. Thanks for joining us today and every Tuesday and Saturday when we talk about the business of cannabis, helping you to make informed decisions about an ever-growing industry. And don't forget, if you've missed this broadcast or you've missed some of our other ones, we've had plenty of them. Just go to just go out and Google 411 on 420, and you will find us right out there on. And go to our website. We have dozens of people already that we have interviewed, and some of the really excellent topics from local, national leaders and international leaders as well. So anyway, we are here today with Nick Van Putten, and we are talking about the business of cannabis and elections, and well, basically how the ban in Pierce County came to be, and how it's now been, voted upon, and the different methods that are going on there. But we were talking about funding when we left. Campaigns get a lot of funding, Nick. They get a lot of funding, but there's a lot of different ways that people are concerned about when they're talking about money. Is a super PAC, a donation, big donations, little donations, dark money. Explain a little bit about what people can understand with what are their limits and where does all this money come from and how's it dealt with?
Yeah, and that's an interesting question. We get that a lot, frankly, because of all the national attention around around super PACs, right? And these shadow campaigns. Well, the ironic thing is we actually always have. Washington State's always had a little bit more a loose policy regarding PACs than some other states, right?
Okay.
And so there isn't a lot of impact of some of these national decisions or lack of decisions from regulatory authorities that have kind of allowed this expansion in super PAC spending.
So what is a personal donation opportunity? What's a maximum a single person can give
to a PAC? Whatever you want.
Just to a candidate.
Well, candidates are subject to contribution limits, right?
Okay,
so that's a little bit. Yep.
Okay.
So it depends on the office. Typically, that's either $1,000 or $2,000 per individual. Now, an individual, as we all know, includes businesses.
A corporation can now be an individual. Okay, yes, definitely.
They're people too, right?
And they're big people.
They're big people, but they have the same contribution limit. So a labor union, a business, or an individual are all subject to the same limit. So let's suppose that you and your spouse have a joint checking account, and you own a business. That is 3 different individuals who can write max out checks. Right?
Okay, so
when we say it's $1,000,
$246, or if it's a national campaign, $1,000 if it's a local campaign.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. So and it varies a little bit by race. Now that said, PACs are a little bit different. You can give an individual or a business can give.
Now before we do that, there's a political action committee, which is a PAC, and then there's a super PAC. Let's talk about the difference between those before we go into. So, what is the difference between a PAC and a super PAC?
Locally, there is no difference.
Okay.
when we hear about that nationally, we think of these super PACs. We hear about dark money, right?
Right.
And so what you've got is really a loosening of the definition of what the primary function of an organization can be. Right?
Okay.
So if you've got a group that says, okay, we're not endorsing or supporting or opposing a candidate, but we're a group around the issue of marijuana legalization,
Okay.
right? That group can do a whole lot of political activities, some of which can include ballot measures or supporting or opposing candidates, let's suppose nationally, right?
Right.
And they, in some instances, wouldn't need to disclose their donors if their primary activity is not electioneering. Right.
So that's the interesting difference between if you were giving a personal donation, obviously you're disclosing who you are, whether that's your business or your husband, wife, or whatever. But a political action committee, they give it to an organization that's been formed as a political action committee, but that can or cannot be disclosed, or how is it?
Well, so typically it is disclosed unless you have one of these these kind of shadow organizations which operate under a little bit more ambiguous set of laws.
So when you say shadow, is that like the super PAC?
That's what people often refer to, the super
okay.
PACs. Now, here in Washington, that's not relevant because we have PACs that have always been allowed to receive unlimited contributions, or at least for quite some time.
Without having to disclose?
Nope, you have to disclose, regardless of your federal tax status or how you operate federally.
So there is no opportunity to be dark in the state of Washington, then?
Generally speaking, no. We do a little bit better job of enforcing the laws here than they do over at the FEC.
But other states have no compunction. They can actually do that. There's several states where you can go into that state if you're doing business, or you just go over to that state and hand some money, it sounds like.
Yeah, I know. Certainly a lot of states do have looser laws than we do in Washington. Couldn't speak too much towards
I'm just wondering
specific
where
states.
you find these ones where do you find these places that are quote unquote dark money super PACs that people have hid their contributions, so they have unlimited. We hear about the billionaires
Gotcha. Okay, I hear what you're saying.
buying this money all the time. How does that occur?
So the issue of state versus national, right?
Okay.
So you could start a national PAC in Washington State.
Okay.
If you don't influence Washington state elections, you're a national organization, even if you're in Washington, right?
Okay.
So our laws only regulate elections here at the local or state level.
State and local. Okay.
Exactly. Yep. So, so an individual or a business can write an unlimited amount to a PAC. A PAC includes a ballot measure committee, right? So, for example, something on the marijuana advisory vote, or I-502, or whatever else is going to be on the ballot this year.
Right. So then they can just say, okay, I'm going to give. I have a spare $500,000. I'm going to go dump it in that, and nobody's going to know it came from me.
No, you do have to disclose. Here,
Okay.
yeah, for local elections, right?
Okay,
for state
but
and
I'm
local
just saying,
elections, you
if
do
it's
have
not
to disclose.
local, it's let's say I'm going to do a national measure on, let's say, legalize cannabis across the nation, and I want to go for that initiative and so forth. Maybe there's an election opportunity to do that, and we want to go. Okay, I want to put my money towards that for all things cannabis across the nation, and I want to dump $500,000 into it. Is there an opportunity to do that from Washington, or do I have to go to another state, or how does that work?
You wouldn't have to go to another state. The extent to which you're allowed to do that without disclosing your donors is a very finicky tax law that I don't want to advise on.
Okay, but there are people that know how to do that.
There are tax attorneys who I'm sure know how to do that.
Okay. Well, I'm just trying to, I watched Colbert when he was doing his little thing about creating his little super PAC, which was actually hilarious.
And then he handed it off to Jon Stewart on air, right?
Oh, yeah.
And they didn't coordinate, right? Because they had this public communication. Yeah, and that actually does get at one of
That's another thing we need to understand. What does that mean when you say they didn't coordinate?
What is coordination? Yeah, it's in the eye of the beholder, and ultimately it's
explain why it's important to understand.
Oh, sure, understood. Yeah, so basically what you've got is what we mentioned in terms of candidate campaigns, right? So let's shift back, and we're not talking about ballot measures or PACs now. We're talking about candidates.
Okay.
If you want to start a PAC that supports a candidate, right, then you're allowed to, the PAC could, for example, they could donate to the candidate, right, indirectly, and they're subject to the same contribution limits that any individual would be.
Right.
Instead, if what a PAC wants to do is they want to spend money in that race to support the candidate, they need not be subject to the same contribution limits. So they can spend up an unlimited amount of money on the race under the condition that they're not coordinating that with the candidate or the
So
campaign
they're not
himself.
talking to anybody in the candidate's office and so forth. Wink, wink.
Right. Now, again, here in Washington State, we have a little bit better enforcement than they do at the national level. So I certainly, in my profession, wouldn't try the stunt that Jon Stewart and Colbert did, right? Oh, well, we're on radio or TV. We're not talking to each other. We're both talking to the audience. Never mind, we're both watching our same program.
Right. Exactly.
So I wouldn't do that here. But if you are not coordinating, right, then you can spend money in that race. One thing that is common to do in campaigns is if you go to some candidates' websites, you'll find that they have like a gallery section on there, and they'll just post a B tape of video, audio, or photos. Right?
Okay.
Well, that's not for the voters to see. I mean, the voters can see it, right? But no one cares, right?
Yeah.
That's for your PACs.
Oh, okay.
So that's you post that so that if there's a group out there and they want to support you, they have your campaig's professional production material that they can then use in their own ads.
It's publicly accessible.
It's publicly accessible.
You can
Yep.
grab it from anywhere you want. I see how you are. Yeah. Interesting.
I'm not encouraging people to do this, by the way.
No, but you're showing the nuances of how things are taking place, because people understand that with Citizens United, it actually said, hey, corporations are people. So that's a big issue. And we see that all over the news right now. Corporations are people. Wow. And that money is free speech.
Yeah.
But some people have more money, so their speech.
They're freer.
They're freer. They have opportunity to speak louder.
Yeah.
So, and that's how we're talking about. You get the louder opportunity to speak because you can either be a corporation or you can form your own super PAC, couldn't you, if you choose?
Yeah.
I mean,
anyone could.
Cool.
Yeah.
It doesn't take very much. It's not a complicated process.
As long as you got rich friends.
Well, you don't even need rich friends to form one. I mean, you can form a super PAC without having a lot of money to begin with, and then you just now go out there and find rich friends.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
You guys, hey, I did this. Come on down. You're the next contestant. We need your cash.
Yep.
And we're going to be doing this for that. Now, is that always around just candidates, or is it around initiatives? Can there be super PACs and or dark money that's around initiatives?
Well, again, there's no such thing as dark money here in Washington State.
Oh,
right?
yeah, but I'm just
So on initiative campaigns, you do have ballot measure committees that are PACs under state law, right?
Okay.
And so those operate in the same way that any candidate-oriented PAC would operate, which is that they can spend unlimited amounts of money on the ballot measure.
Okay, so that's why when we did the 502, there were some people that actually put millions in.
Yep, yeah.
And
Charter schools is a great example. You saw, what was it, near $1 million, I think, from the Gates family.
Yes, I remember seeing that. I think there was Rick Steves actually did on 502 put a nice big chunk of change in there to get 502 passed.
Yep. And we've got big money on both progressive and conservative sides of measures.
Okay. Well, yeah, and it doesn't matter. I mean, there's always going to be people on both sides and people on both sides that want to see that go in their favor. And they in some cases, hey, $1 million is just like $10 to you.
I'll tell you, the Pierce County vote wasn't $1 million though.
No, I'm sure it wasn't. We now you got on board and when you did that, the advisory vote, getting the yes and so forth, getting to uphold the rescission, if you will, so that we can get back to normal, if you will, and so forth. How does that process go? I mean, what do you guys do? I mean, you target an ad and so forth. Are you doing flyers? Are you the people that are out there knocking on doors, or what? As a numbers individual, what are you doing specifically?
Yeah, and actually, it's a good question that you brought up in terms of the doors. And that was one of the challenges in this election. Is you've got Pierce County is a big county, and even the unincorporated areas, you've got over 200,000 registered voters. Right.
I mean, you can take almost an hour driving from end to end.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. So, it's rural out there, right? So you're knocking on doors, and it's not up the stairs, down the stairs, and right over, right?
Yeah,
it's
down driveways.
Exactly. Yep. So there wasn't. We did some targeted phone calling, right?
Okay.
But there wasn't a concerted doorbelling effort just because the county's too damn large, right? So you could spend, we could have 5 staff out there knocking on doors day in, day out, 40, 60 hours a week, and we'd have talked to 2% of the county.
That's not a very big, but you decide to target in concentrated areas. That's why everybody believes and higher voter turnout. So you look at those things now. How do you get that information?
Well, so we have in Washington State. How you vote is obviously private, but when and if you vote is not. Right, so it's public record. So what we do is we request data on going back in your voter history. Right, so who are the people who vote consistently in special elections, or who are the people who vote in regular elections?
So how do you know if they're Republican or Democrat? Or is it because they vote in primaries and they declare?
Yeah, there are a couple ways we can get a hint. So we don't always know, right? Okay. We don't have party identification in Washington State when you register, right? So in some states, you register as a Democrat or Republican. We don't do that here.
We do the top two thing, isn't it?
Yes, exactly. So the top two candidates, regardless of party, make it through in the primary. So instead, what we do, you mentioned something that there's and we have one coming up next week, I believe. Actually, today, ballots should be going out for the presidential preference primary.
Exactly.
Yep. So when you get that envelope, or if you already have, there's a little thing on front that says, I consider myself to be a member of the Democratic Party, or I consider myself to be a member of the Republican Party.
And that determines on your vote how it counts on the inside.
Yeah, now you can vote for whoever you want within that party choice on the inside, right? You're not allowed to swap.
If you declare yourself a Democrat, you can't vote for Republican.
Right, don't do that. Your vote won't count. I think, our auditor's been very clear on that.
Well, but you could ostensibly say you're a Republican and then vote for whatever Republican you choose.
Exactly.
And really be a Democrat or
absolutely.
vice versa.
Absolutely.
No one's really going to check.
Well, they'll check, but no one cares, right?
Okay.
So we don't have, there's no enforcement out there saying, well, you're not really a Republican, so we're not going to count your vote, or we're going to challenge that. If you consider yourself for the purpose of this election to be a Republican, then you can vote Republican. If you consider yourself for the purpose of this election to be a Democrat, you can vote Democrat. And then, come November, you can always just vote for whoever the heck you want.
Because no one's going to ask.
Right. But we do know how you filled it out. So the parties
That's interesting. How do you know how I filled it out? Because it's private.
Well, the ballot is private. The envelope is not.
No. You got to explain that one here. The envelope is not.
So I'll give you a great example. Back in 2000 and...
Oh, you mean the envelope on the outside where it says
the envelope on the outside,
where you
exactly.
say you're Democrat and Republican?
Yep, exactly. So great example.
That's interesting.
Last time we had one of these, which I don't think was in 2012, but 2008, it was a little bit different system, if I remember correctly. We actually got an envelope with two separate ballots on it, right? So there are two different pieces of paper, a red piece and a blue piece. So which piece was returned is a public record.
Oh.
How you voted on that piece of paper is private, and we can't know.
Okay.
Right? But we can use that data to determine whether or not we think you're a Republican or a Democrat. But we never really know.
This sounds like a political ploy to figure out who's in what.
We're talking about wasting money on elections. I think there might be another example here.
Well, it's an opportunity to figure out, who people are, what they represent.
Absolutely. The parties want to know.
And what's interesting is that people don't understand that. They don't see that from all they see is a blue and a red piece of paper.
Yep.
They don't see that, if I filled out that, I just labeled myself.
At the end of the day, we're concerned about our own personal privacy in a lot of this.
Well, that's why we're getting to the top two thing. That's why we have what we have, because it was about the privacy issues and about not declaring. And I want to not be forced to be one or the other. I want to have my independence. Yep. That was the entire reason for this whole conversation.
Yeah, it'll never work. Here's the problem, right? Here's the problem. That's one data point, right? Is that ballot? But ultimately, even if the parties didn't have that, they're still out collecting data on you no matter what, right? They're buying consumer information reports to see, are you a member of the NRA? Do you subscribe to a hunting magazine? Are you listening to KLAY radio? Right? That might be a good tip on your partisanship, perhaps. And so we've got a lot of other data points, including, frankly, every time a candidate knocks on your door and says, "Hey, I'm Steve. I'm running for state representative. I'm a Republican. Do you plan on voting for me?" If you say yes, the Republican Party is going to take that data and they're going to think, okay, well, we got a Republican voter here at the House. Likewise, if you're talking to Sarah at the door and she says, I'm a Democrat running for state representative, when you got her vote, then the Democratic Party will consider you a Democrat. So the parties are always out there trying to gather data.
So how do we find about the demographics of the cannabis pro versus con? So tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, that's a really good question. And actually tying that back to talking about this is an April advisory vote, right?
Exactly.
And turnout at less than half, right? So who are those voters who voted in April, who are the voters who voted in November 2012 who didn't vote in April? Right, just now, and the answer is it's everyone who's yet less than 65. Right,
seriously,
it's So looking
less than 65, you didn't vote.
Well, comparatively, yeah. So looking at what we do is, and again, I mentioned that how you vote is private, but when you vote and if you vote is not. Right. So what we do regularly in our elections is we'll get what's called a matchback file from the county auditor during an election. So ballots go out, right? We're all absentee only, right?
Right.
And we have about 18 days or so that people have to have their ballots before the election date. And we get typically daily returns of who are the people who have already returned their ballot. Now, I don't know whether they voted yes or no, but I do know who they are. And I know their demographics because I can look that up in public voter databases. So, looking...
And there's some way to do this so it's quickly, and you're not data entering all this stuff. Right?
Oh, no.
You're
No.
this
Yeah,
digital
buying bulk data.
You're getting a digital download.
Yeah.
And you're putting it into a database, and you're doing the analytics on top of that.
Correct.
This is where the science comes.
Yes.
In the politics of science. Okay.
And so to give you an example, we looked at the partway point
Right.
on the last this April measure, and compared the demographics of the electorate that had so far returned to their ballot by the second week, compared to the people who voted in November 2012.
Okay.
And found that not a great sign. We saw that we were running behind among non-seniors by about 9%. So our demographics were 9% higher, 65 plus, than the electorate in 2012. Now, it's not surprising, right? That's about what we expected given an April turnout.
So what is the reason that these folks don't vote? I mean, it's really, especially in a year where it seems we have a revolution going on with a lot of people voting who haven't voted in the past.
Yeah, you do. I mean, you do have certainly some younger voters turning out in the caucus, or
Right.
Perhaps they may vote in the presidential preference primary, perhaps in November as well. And yeah, in some elements that's a good sign. But unfortunately, this election was rigged, so that we weren't putting this on the same date as the primary. We weren't putting it on the same date as the November election when those voters would have turned out.
Right.
So instead we put it on an April ballot, which they knew was going to have lower turnout because of just the inertia of getting...
Well, there were a few other things on that ballot. Didn't just about everything fail?
Just about, yeah.
Yeah.
And it actually depends on where you live. So I'm in Tacoma. I didn't get a ballot.
Right,
a lot of folks
neither,
didn't. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's a separate issue.
Yeah.
Some voters in certain districts, like out in Bethel School District, I know they had a school measure on as well. I know that out in University Place there was a Parks District measure, but there was actually no overlap there because University Place is, of course, a city. It's incorporated. And the Pierce County advisory vote on marijuana was only to unincorporated jurisdictions.
Right, but there was Bethel is way out there in that area, so that counts.
Yeah, so some voters received 2 items on their ballot. Others, a lot of folks just had 1.
Okay. And did anything pass? I mean, given it was an off election and so forth, I don't think
I think there was a fire measure, a fire levy that passed somewhere.
You know, it's interesting. I never see fire fail. So,
right. So something about your house burning down.
Yeah.
You don't want to deny funding.
Fire and police never seem to fail. So
police sometimes do.
Oh well.
University Place had a.
Oh, well, not. It's not a regular occurrence.
Correct.
Let's put it that way.
Correct.
Usually, fire is pretty much a given, and police is up to 90 plus.
Yep.
On percentage wise of passing. At least that's my experience over the
Yeah.
time that I've been voting. And fortunately for me, I've voted every election since I turned 18 that I could vote. I've been in there voting.
I can look that up. You better not lie.
Well, everything I could. I can look that up, man. So everyone that actually I have. I can't remember one that I haven't voted in. I don't remember one that I haven't. So
that's good.
There may be one of the off-year elections that I missed or something like that because I forgot to turn my ballot in.
Or an April special.
Yeah, exactly what I mean.
One of those little elections.
Yeah, ones that I didn't think that it was that important. I'm like, whatever.
Or they just put something on the top that says this is advisory only and your vote won't count, and then you don't turn it in.
Yeah, and why bother? And then I totally understand that as why I wouldn't want to or even bother with it if you think about it. But let's do this. Let's take a break. Come back after these short messages. And we're going to talk a little bit more about what's going on with the bans around the state. I'm Darrell Bowman, your business and IT professional in cannabis. We'll be right back after these short messages.
Thanks to our friends at Zukin.com, your local strain directory for the cannabis connoisseur. That's ZOOKEN.com, Zukin.com. Find your strain.
AimBiz.com brings you the life of a business website. The majority of business websites can't be found by search engines, so their owners lose customers and money. An AIM business website wins new customers on Google and Facebook. Imagine your website with great content management, an integrated blog, clean designs, and clear messages. To top it off, at aimbiz.com, you get a free website design mock-up before you ever spend a dime. For more information, go to aimbiz.com. That's AIMBIZ.com.
Sweatman Young is proud to celebrate 25 years of construction service throughout South Puget Sound, working together with you to guarantee your satisfaction and offer you a unique 2-year warranty on all work. Let Sweatman Young build your new dream home, remodel your existing home, add an additional deck, outdoor kitchen, a man cave, or even preserve your historic home. Sweatman Young provides the best construction value in South Puget Sound. Visit sweatmanyoung.com today and schedule your free consultation with Bill Sweatman, your personal professional contractor.
Ever get a traffic ticket? Had a bill you couldn't collect? Had a contract you needed advice about, such as a new insurance plan, home, or car loan? We run into these situations routinely throughout our lives. We know we need legal advice, but feel we just can't afford hiring an expensive attorney to help. Legal Shield and your legal team is now your affordable option, allowing each of us to rest assured we can quickly get the help we need for one low monthly fee. Whether it's business or personal legal advice, visit yourlegalteam.info today.
Welcome back to the 411 on 420. I'm Daryl Bowman, your business and IT professional in cannabis. Hey, thanks again for joining us today and every Tuesday and Saturday when we talk about the business of cannabis and helping you to make informed decisions about a, well, budding industry. Hey, I am here today with Nick Van Putten, and we are talking, and am I getting that right? Is that Putin or Putin?
You aren't, but ever since first grade I've had it wrong.
Oh my gosh, I've been screwing that up the entire thing. And
It's Van Putten.
I saw that, I'm like going, okay, I saw that little look on your face and I went, did I screw that up again? I got it right. I think I got it right the first time, and I didn't do it the second time.
You and Mrs. Williams.
Yeah, Mrs. Williams. Okay. Well, I won't go into what I was called when I was a kid, but it's just not right. I mean, to mess up your name. I mean, I'm Daryl, and they believe me. Like my other brother, they spell it differently.
Yeah.
Everywhere, it's kind of different. All over the place, it's been different. But, we have learned quite a bit about what's going on with regards to how these initiatives are funded, how these initiatives are managed, and how do you what is it that you do that makes it successful? What do you, when you take this analytics, you grab this, what are you doing? You're grabbing all this stuff down, you're putting it into a database, then what are you doing? Looks like you got to be manipulating it somehow to get the right answer or to get some kind of direction you're going to take.
Yeah, so I'll give you a great example. I mean, we talked about just before the break, we talked about the demographics of the April measure and who was voting. It was mostly disproportionately seniors compared to a November general election, right? So how does that inform our decision? Well, what we know is that senior voters tend to be a little bit more public safety oriented, right? They tend to be less likely to be users of recreational marijuana.
That's why fire passed.
Yeah. Yep. So what we do is we then tailored the message specifically towards that more senior heavy audience, right? So we talked more about public safety. We featured current and retired police officers. Right. We did do other elements targeting other demographics. For example, we used some targeted Facebook advertising to reach out to younger voters with a slightly more pro marijuana legalization method on its own merit, right, rather than just the public safety side. So that's part of how we use the data.
Okay, so and let's talk about that. What's interesting is a campaign cost, and we never know what that is. And I know that it seems to be escalating every year. There's a little bit more from a local perspective. What's it cost for somebody to run an initiative like this? I mean, if you're going to say I'm going to put something on the ballot, and whether it's advisory or otherwise, it's probably a little less in this kind of election versus a general election. I'm guessing.
Yeah, and that's always a hard question to answer. People ask, well, what does it cost to run for city council, or what does it cost for an initiative?
I'm just talking overall. I'm not talking about your fee.
Yeah, no, I gotcha. Well, exactly. But the problem is there's no budget where it's if you spend $70,000 you get to buy the initiative, and if you spend $69,000 you can't buy it, right?
But everybody seems to think the more money you have, the more opportunity, the more likely you are to win.
Exactly, and it does. But there's no bright line, right?
Okay.
So you can put something. The cost of putting something on the ballot is not that significant. You have if you have a petition process where you're collecting signatures, that's different from what we had here in April, right, where it was passed by council. There's certainly certainly a cost associated with that. If you can do volunteers collecting signatures, you can reduce some of that cost. Ultimately, it depends on the jurisdiction. How many registered voters are there?
There's a lot of consternation about paid signature collectors and so forth.
Yes, there is.
Otherwise, volunteer. It's got to be. Hey, that means it's really the people are for it versus paid.
Yeah,
are you buying that election?
but it's more effective. So sometimes you gotta do that to fill in the margin. A great example in terms of what elections cost. This is about candidates rather than measures, just because it's easier to kind of describe here. You've got my favorite example to give is Tacoma School Board.
Okay.
Right, Tacoma School District has about 110,000 registered voters. It's slightly larger than the city of Tacoma.
Okay, yeah, because they're going to outside jurisdictions. Yes.
Yep, exactly. And your typical campaign budget for that is maybe $10,000 to $20,000. Okay.
Okay, that's the entire campaign budget.
Entire campaign budget. Yep.
Okay, so it doesn't seem like a lot to raise, but it's
very very small. Yeah. So
and that's for a position that doesn't even pay.
Yes. Whereas you've got your state legislature, right? Your state representative, for example. And a typical campaign budget there is more like $100,000 to $200,000.
Well, that's a significant chunk of change.
It is. And the district.
What's that geographic or population that we're covering?
Yep, it's about half.
Okay.
About half the size of the Tacoma School
District.
District.
50,000 people that are going to cost you 10 times, 20 times as much.
Exactly.
Okay, to get elected. But that's a paid position now.
Yeah, it is. It is. They don't. Contrary to public opinion, our local elected officials don't get paid that much, except Pierce County Council. Those guys make too much. Oh. Sorry, I just saw Connie in the room. She's gonna get mad at me.
Never mind. They get paid too much.
Most of them would agree.
Okay, yeah. Well, probably.
Yeah.
But anyway, so they're getting there. So now we know it's about $200K for a state rep and so forth. But
yeah.
Now we're looking at is that the same for that's a senator or that's not?
Yeah, those tend to be a little bit higher. So something like this where you have a district of about 200,000 registered voters for the Pierce County.
Real quick.
Yeah.
You got the state reps, but what's the difference between a state rep and a state senator?
You have half as many.
Okay. So there's literally
it's the same district. Yeah.
Same district.
Different body. So once they get down in Olympia, the dynamics are very different.
Because a lot of people don't understand this public thing. So why do they care? Representatively speaking, what do those two things? What do those two positions do differently for each other? I mean, for you, for the voter in my jurisdiction.
The same.
A rep versus a senator, but they're working in two different chambers. Right?
They're working in two different chambers. Yeah.
Okay.
But they're both part of the legislative branch of our state government. They both represent the exact same jurisdiction. You just have two representatives and one senator. So.
Okay. Good. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And then so moving on now upwards. Keep going. I mean, because the next thing I think is congressional, aren't they?
Yeah, those vary a lot. We don't work federally, so that's not a race I could really speak to.
Well, I do know that last time I looked, it was like about $4,000 a day over the course of a 2-year time frame. And that was a few years back. That's what a congressional candidate had to raise from the time they said "I do" until they said "I do" again. If they got reelected, that was about $4,000 a day.
Yep.
So when you think about money in politics. Wow, that's a lot of money to have to raise over a period of time, and that's before you get to a Senate race, which a Senate race is a whole heck of a lot more than that, and that's over a 6-year period. And I think you have to, at that point in time, I think it was about $6,000 to $8,000 a day over a 6-year period that you had to raise every day on average. Not to mention, you get up to the presidential when it's actually this one here is astronomical. By the way.
Yeah. It'll be huge.
I mean,
huge.
Obama's was $1 billion, $1.5 billion, right?
Yeah.
And so this one here is becoming, this one here is getting a little bit more.
I think you're bringing up the federal congressperson representative versus senator is a good example, though, because you've got, we have 10 Congress people, but we have only 2 senators that are statewide, right? So you've got the state divided into 10 separate districts, and they're raising more than, I believe, 1/10 the amount as the federal senators.
Right.
So ironically, even though the Senate races are a higher budget, the actual spending per voter is typically lower.
Yeah, there's only 2 of them they have to raise again. They're not
and it's statewide.
Yeah, they're against each other, and so it's not that big of a. It's not like they have to. Well, they're going into a small jurisdiction when they're doing a congressional.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the key point I'm trying to get at here is that you have some jurisdictions where if you're looking at it, if your town has a referendum or initiative process, and it's a small town and you've got 10 or 20,000 registered voters, your campaign's not going to be that expensive because there just aren't that many voters there, right? So your spending per voter is going to be pretty significant. But if you're looking at a jurisdiction like Pierce County, that has a lot of registered voters, or Washington State, right, statewide, you have, of course, tons. Your spending per voter actually, even as the scale of the campaign budget increases, the spending per voter tends to be smaller.
Okay. So let's think about back to cannabis a little bit because, hey, we're talking about cannabis, but we have to understand the political process to understand where we're going here and so forth. There are numerous bans throughout the state, and as we're seeing in Pierce County, it's like, we're progressive. We're a little bit more progressive in Pierce County. We're kind of like a mix between progressive and conservative, if you will. We're like on that border at 50-50.
We're a swing county.
Yeah, we are in a big way. But now we're back on the progressive side, which and we're getting there, if you will. And there are some other local jurisdictions here. I think Lakewood and a few others that still have bans in place and or moratoriums on additional implementations and so forth. But over the course of time, those are going to have to fade away. They're using certain kind of legal means do you know what kind of legal means they're using to implement these bans?
Well, there are a couple different things. So, for example, here in Pierce County, the justification was that, and if you talk to some of the county council members, they may have claimed over the years that we don't have a ban here. All we have is a requirement that you have to get a federal okay. Right, which means it's a ban. So waiting for the feds to legalize it is one way that's been done. You can also use really extreme zoning practices. So, for example, you could say, I suppose you've got, again, a small town, right?
Right.
You say, well, yeah, you have to be 2 miles from the nearest school or playground.
Yeah,
and of course your town doesn't have one.
And your town's only a mile and a half wide.
Right. Yeah, exactly. The other thing you can do is you can pass a moratorium, which is of course a temporary measure, and that's what we saw in Seattle.
I think they can only do those for that just happened recently, by the way. I mean, literally they did it one night, just bam.
That surprised a lot of folks.
Without any kind of warning, they said, we're going to have a moratorium, and that was based on more additional retail outlets being opened up within the city limits of Seattle.
Right.
And Tacoma did the same thing. We're actually in the process of evaluating that. We had Marty Campbell here talking about that process where they have 3 different proposal types that are going ahead and what those are going to be with regards to caps and implementation and location and all of that. So there's a whole big variation on theme about how that's going to be implemented. And I suspect that some of that is going to happen with Seattle and how they're going to go about it. And it's interesting in how that dynamic is, but they did it instantly to stop grandfathering.
Exactly, and I don't believe that Seattle has the intent of actually blocking any of this, right? It is genuinely to evaluate or refine the policy, right? And I think that Tacoma did the same thing. Other jurisdictions, we actually just saw this in Auburn, where they passed a moratorium, and then they used that to buy the time to build a policy for a ban.
Oh, interesting. Right. Oh, yeah. So because you can only moratorium for like 6 months or something like
typically,
that.
Typically, yeah.
But they can extend the moratorium. If
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah. So they have been able to do that in a little bit, and so they did. I didn't know what did Auburn do to ban. I don't get that. What was that happen? What did they made some kind of a rules that similar to the mile and a half or whatever.
Yeah. There's some exception possible through the Planning Commission, but otherwise, so it has to do with non-conforming use permits or something like that.
So, what do you think about the future adoption overall? Do you think we're going to end up having the acceptance? Everybody's going to, over the course of time, it's going to all this ban and all these bans and so forth. They're just going to go, you know what? We're missing out on the tax dollars.
Well, that's one of the challenges, actually, is when this was passed originally in 2012, it allocated a greater share of the funding to the local jurisdictions to fund things like police, fire, schools, etc. And in 2013, I believe it was, the state legislature, going through a budget crisis of their own, decided to grab some of that funding back to the state. So it actually...
When you say grabbing, how did they do that, though?
They just changed the law.
Well, they changed the law, but didn't they change it and say, listen, if you've got a ban in place, you don't get any of that cash? And you shouldn't get any of that cash anyway if you got a ban in place.
Yes, but they also changed it so that if you don't have a ban in place, you get a smaller share of it than when the initiative was originally framed.
Well, that's just not what we planned.
It's part of why you've seen a lot of jurisdictions weigh in and say, hey, that's actually not worth it for us.
That's interesting. I didn't realize that was the case. And you know what? How does that go about? Can you change that by initiative? Because I think, initiatively speaking, there was a lot of things inside the law that said, specifically taxation-wise, that was 25% excise tax on grow, 25 on process, and 25 on retail. Plus, we're going to add another 10% on top of that for sales tax.
9.6.
Yeah, whatever. You get it. Okay, go with the point, whatever. But the point being,
it's pretty heavily taxed.
It was but over the course of the adoption, the legislators have also eliminated that from, what's that, like 85 points down to 37.5.
Right.
And I think they still added the sales tax on top.
Yes.
And then with the medical initiative happening, with their folding over in the medical, they said, well, we're going to still keep that excise, but you will not have to pay the sales.
Yeah, that's my understanding.
Yeah, so the sales tax. But then we're going to have to say, if you want to do medical, you got to get authorized, and we're going to have certification. And in order to be able to give medical advice, you're going to have some kind of certification allow for that, which, by the way, I think is in the process of being developed as we speak, because I think July 1, the adoption of those people with that medical endorsement is going to take place, and all of the dispensaries are out the door.
Yeah, and frankly, that's all the more reason that I expect the Pierce County Council to uphold their current policy, is because July 1st, according to state law, that's what was set by the legislature, the medical dispensaries have to close down or reopen themselves as retail marijuana locations.
Yeah, they had to be authorized to do so, and every single one in the city of Tacoma has to have a medical endorsement, I understand. If they're one of the new ones, I believe.
I haven't been following the Tacoma laws carefully.
Yeah, that was one of the things. If you wanted the additional ones, they said because they were transitioning medical. By the way, from the initial 9, they were transitioning the additional 7, I think it was. If you're going to get those, they have to actually have a medical endorsement, because they're quote unquote coming over from a medical perspective. That's the only reason we got the adoption of those, to eliminate the dispensary thing. So that's going to be the implementation process for Tacoma's and so forth. I'm not positive about Pierce County, but I suspect that other jurisdictions are going to be thinking the same thing, given that they want to address the medical community.
Probably. It's an opportunity to call your city council members.
Exactly.
And one of the challenges, different jurisdictions have or don't have the citizens' right to initiative and referenda. So certain cities have the ability for citizens to put this on the ballot and force the issue. Others do not.
Why is that?
Just depends on how the city was incorporated and if they've passed those initiatives as part of their charter.
Oh, okay. So then, that's a little research you've got to do on your own if you want to find out what's going on in your area.
Yep.
So how do people get involved to make a difference in their community? Because we're here talking to a lot of people across the country in a lot of different jurisdictions. And again, we're only in 5 states up front that are actually recreationally speaking, but 23 states are medicinally speaking, and that's growing with California in this general election.
Yep.
I think Florida's going to be out there. So there's some big states that are going to be looking at recreational very quickly. And that'll change the landscape, I think, nationally overall, and the adoption process. So we're going to tear down borders, so to speak, in my opinion.
Well, and one of the challenges is, at least on the political side, there is no central authority where you can go for advice or information. So you got to do a lot of the legwork on your own, or listen to KLAY, or give us a call.
Oh, and by the way, how does somebody give you a call? And what do they do? How do they find you guys? Is that Progressive Strategies Northwest or NW?
Yeah, we're at Progressive Strategies NW.com or on Facebook, and yeah.
Oh, yeah, you're on Facebook.
We're on Facebook. Yeah. We actually sent out a targeted ad recently.
Yeah. Oh, very cool. Yeah. You want to run for office? We have an initiative for you. There we go. How many races are you involved right now?
Right now we're working on 11.
11?
Yep.
Okay. Now, are those across the state?
Yes, for the most part, yeah. And actually, last year we had a really fun couple of races out in Yakima.
Okay.
We worked on city council and 2 city council races, one of whom is the current mayor. We elected the first 2 Latinas, or 2 of the 3 first Latinas in the city's history.
Oh, fantastic!
That was a fun race.
So, can we talk about who you're who you're working for this year? For these, or I mean, I'm just asking.
Yeah, sure. I mean, there are a couple different. A couple elections passed, right? So we had the April election working the marijuana measure. We also worked on a measure out in UP.
Which one in UP was it?
The Parks one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you can't win them all.
We won a race in February special election out in the Peninsula School District.
That's even getting worse. They were going in April. You got one in February. That was probably the only one on that ballot.
It was, but school measures are typically in special elections, so voters are a little more accustomed to that. Might have been one of the votes you missed back in the years.
Well, yeah, probably. I mean, my gosh, man, he's voting all every week, man. For God's sakes, we're supposed to vote twice a year or once a year. Good for me. Twice a year, maybe. But come on, you're getting me every month or every other month? Yeah, February.
We have a lot of elections this year.
Yeah.
Well, and so here locally, so we have a couple of races throughout the area, but here locally, we're also working on a couple of races for Pierce County Council, trying to establish a Democratic majority. So we're working with Carolyn Edmonds out in District 2, who's running against Pam Roach, who you may have heard of.
Well, yes, we've heard of Pam Roach. I mean, who hasn't heard of Pam Roach? I mean, Roach.
Yeah. Also working with Kurt Erickson, who's running against Doug Richardson, who's the reason we had this advisory vote.
Oh, yes, that's true, because Doug flip-flopped on the thing. I got that. I remember. Yep. Okay. Yeah, interesting. He was going one way, but said, but on the other time, we'll go ahead and vote on the advisory. Yeah, I remember.
We also work on other nonpartisan races, so there are a couple of judicial candidates running for Superior Court, an office you may or may not have heard about or paid attention to. But
I think you've got,
Tom Quinlan.
Yeah, Tom Quinlan, yeah.
Dominique Jinhong as well for separate positions, so both great candidates.
Yeah, I think Tom's a great candidate, by the way.
Thank you.
Not that I'm endorsing or anything. Hey, Tom, it's good. I'm endorsing you. No, seriously, he's a good guy. I've known him for a long time, and I think he'd be an excellent candidate for judge. That's just my opinion. I'm Daryl Bowman. Anyway, thanks again for joining us. Hey, Nick, fantastic. Any other words of wisdom you got for people that are thinking about working on an initiative, getting involved in a campaign, or want to see cannabis move forward in any space?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing is get involved. Democracy is us, and if we sit on the sidelines, our elected officials aren't going to listen. So get up, give them a call. First of all, your city council members, your state legislatures, your county council members. Make sure they know your opinion. And then if you don't like what they have to say, run against them.
Yeah, an interesting thing when you say that. That's I want to point out, because a lot of folks from the cannabis industry are wonderful people, and they really have their hearts in the right position and so forth, and their head, their mindsets in there. But they tend to be emotional in a big way, and we can't be too emotional about what you're doing and so forth. You need to be pragmatic, and you have to be professional, because you are going to meet these individuals, and they're emotional too. They're people as well. They're making a decision, and they're going to listen to what you have to say. But if you're respectful and you're courteous and your facts are there, then they're going to hear you a lot better than they would if you were too passionate, too loud, too vocal, and kind of too disruptive. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, I agree. And I think that that's one of the things that for me is something I'm always explaining to folks. We hear about we feel so disengaged from politics nationally. We hear about how all the vitriol in the national campaigns. We feel like our federal elected officials are out of touch oftentimes. I think that's perhaps not as true as some people think, but especially what I can say is here at the local level, your city council members, your county council members, even the ones I'm running campaigns against, they tend to be good people. They're just your neighbor, and they stepped up to serve.
And then, you know what, everybody wants to do in their opinion what they believe is the right thing to do.
Exactly.
And they're no different from you or I. They have emotions, they have feelings, and so forth. You may or may not think so, but people, if they're worked with in a professional manner, and we talk in a respectful manner, and we can have that dialogue and agree to disagree without being disagreeable, perhaps we can actually move forward and get to the compromise that gets us to moving forward to the goal that we're looking for.
Exactly. And when you can't win at the negotiating table, you've always got an election.
That's the way to go about it. Well, thanks for joining us, Nick. I do appreciate you taking the time out of your busy day to come and join us on the 411 on 420. I'm Daryl Bowman, your business and IT professional in cannabis. We are looking forward to a great show next week as well, so join us. And don't forget to Google us, 411 on 420. Thanks again. We'll see you next week.